hope is here. The way to break free with your host, Angela Pedigo, will light a flame within you. Host Angela Pedigo is an author, speaker, and certified life recovery, grief, and joy restoration coach. Angela uses her own life experiences to help you navigate and guide you to success. She also has developed tools that incorporate her faith and her drive to overcome any obstacle in life. So please welcome the host of The Way to Break Free, Angela Pedigo.
Welcome, everybody, to The Way to Break Free. I'm so glad you could join us today. I'm your host, Angie Pedigo, and I am here today with my good friend, Eric Klein. I cannot wait for you guys to hear his journey from addiction to recovery and getting his life back. So without wasting any time, we're going to jump right into that. Eric, thank you so much for coming on to the show today.
Thank you.
And we were talking before we came live earlier today, going back to where it all started. I'm just going to let him run with it today because he's got such an amazing story and I don't want you to miss any parts of it. So Eric, take us back.
Yeah.
Where to start for you?
So it started pretty young for me. I grew up in California, Southern California, Los Angeles County. And for me, it started at a young age. I grew up in a place that, I was a minority. I started overeating to comfort eating. It was just me and my mother. So I always felt out of place. Every time I'd go to school, I'd always feel like the kids were invited to something. Everybody was involved on an inside joke that I wasn't a part of. I always felt out of place, I knew something was different in my home as opposed to other people's, people with a nuclear family and things like that. So I ate. I would comfort eat, and I would comfort eat. And what that did for me, it was more as just a comfort thing. It wasn't. It was just second nature to do. Just something to feel better. I always felt completely out of place.
How old were you?
I was
at that
time between 5 and 8. Which continued longer. My mother, she married my stepdad when I was 8. And I always felt out of place in the family as well. There was some issues, that went on in the house that I wasn't being received as a son, I felt like, so, whether that was me projecting or what was actually going on, I felt out of place at school. I felt out of place at home. I went through some pretty deep depression for a child that young. From 8 to 10, I was really combative with my stepdad. I'd try to fist fight him. I would be overeating. We would. It got pretty ugly. And for me, these coping skills that I learned just to feel better and to feel different were eating and we're acting out. I always wanted to spend the night at people's houses, never wanted to stay home. And at the time, I didn't see that as any red flags. What red flags would I know at that age?
Right.
So all of my friends growing up were Latino. I was in Southern California, like I said. I'd go to school and I'd get made fun of for being overweight. I'd get made fun of for being white. At a point where I hated myself for a long time. I mean, I never got to a point of establishing any type of self-love at a young age. I was culturally conditioned to think something was wrong with me. So I believed something was wrong with me.
Did you find we'll get to that, I'm sure, but going through your life now that you can look back on those things, conditioned to that at that age, has it always been hard for you not to project in every situation that you go into, like your brain programmed to feeling like I'm not accepted in this space?
As I got older, absolutely. In every aspect of my life, constantly.
Okay.
So
I wasn't trying to expedite your story, but
No.
like I can see where that
Yeah,
what we
no.
learn so little, we like project into
Mhm.
other situations.
Yeah, so I started projecting into everything. So now I'm in this mind state where I was even more of an outsider. Yeah, and I just wanted to be accepted by people. Yeah, which led me into people pleasing.
How'd that work out for
Oh,
you?
it worked out the way it works out for most people. I really just I just wanted to be accepted. I want to be liked, and I was willing to do whatever it took to get that.
Give me some examples of
Of
people pleasing,
of
like
people pleasing.
for you at that time.
Oh, at that time, you know, at that time, it was just doing anything that was asked of me. At that time, it didn't really matter the consequences or anything like that, or what my parents said, or whatever it was. For me, I just wanted to be uh, somebody different, or seen as somebody different. And I don't know how people. I know how I see myself, so I just assumed everybody seen me that way. You know, um, and it was hard. It was really difficult to navigate those emotions at a young age. I couldn't really explain it to my parents in a way that they understood, especially that young. We didn't really have a open communication as far as that goes. So, like I said, I continued to comfort eat. I continued to do everything that I could um, to escape the things that I was going through, to a point where I starved myself. In the sixth grade, I didn't eat for 2 solid weeks. I didn't say a word for 2 solid weeks. Um, and I don't know if anybody even noticed, but it streamlined me losing weight. It did. I went from the fifth grade to sixth grade, now in junior high. So, or in California. So what happened was I went through a growth spurt. I got tall, I got skinny, but I still had this complex where I was different than everybody else. And I was, in a sense, especially growing up there. I started skateboarding and experimenting. We would stand outside of convenience stores and find people to buy us alcohol, or we'd steal alcohol at my friend's house, and I'd spend the night. Their parents were a little more lax than mine, so I would always stay over there. So we started drinking pretty young, and that rapidly progressed, into smoking pot. And honestly, in California at that time, and this is the '90s, so I'm 40 years old. So, but at that time, it was so socially accepted there. I didn't realize it was illegal. I had no idea it was. And it was at the time. It's currently not, but you know, it's just something that everybody did. So culturally, and where I grew up, drugs were everywhere, and everybody was doing them. It seemed like everybody was doing them except for my parents, but
Yeah.
but for me, I quickly found a feeling that made me feel like I belonged for the first time in my life. It made me feel like I was a part of something.
What do you think what was about that feeling? Was it did they receive you differently because you did, you were joining in, or was it because it numbed something for you inside?
Both.
Mm.
They received me differently because I would act different. I wasn't so caught up in myself and my emotions, where I felt this thing that was holding me back. This subconscious behavior where I'm projecting, and I was really unsure of myself, with no self-esteem, and not really outgoing. Um, yeah, it definitely changed the way I behaved, for sure. And it suppressed those feelings. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel so different, and I seen that this was a way for me to relate to other people, the people that I was dying. I was really wanted to relate. I really wanted to belong to something, so in that, I got jumped into a little gang in California in the seventh grade. And we all a bunch of skater kids and stuff like that, and we were into some pretty bad things for seventh graders. And there was a lot of older kids in there as well. Um, but that was a way of life out there. Gangs is a really, um, it's a necessity growing up in a bigger neighborhood.
So did peer pressure play a part in the decisions to do these things, or was it a willingness, like more of a willingness on to belong?
So for me, it was a willingness. I was probably the one doing the peer pressuring at that point. For me, it was a willingness because I felt so out of place, and I had all these, big emotions going on inside that I didn't know how to process. Um, for me, I don't know. It was a lot to go through at that age. I've quickly outgrew my friends in the things that they were doing, and I wanted to experiment with other things. As to where they didn't. They were fine where they were, and I didn't know anything about the nature of addiction. Because for me, I'm genetically predisposed. My father was an addict, and and culturally, I wanted to be a drug addict before I knew what a drug addict was.
So yeah, you said that to me before we
Mhm.
went live today. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Because there may be more people out there that felt
So
that way as a child.
for me, and not to sound cliche, but it was part of it was the music I listened to.
Mhm,
Part of it was, it was the only time that I felt like I belonged when I started experimenting with the first couple things that I did.
mhm.
So in my mind, this is a way for me to not be who I am. Yeah.
So they were doing these things before you, but when you joined in, then it couldn't stop there for you.
Oh, it
Like
didn't
that,
stop there for me.
the addictive brain was
Oh,
talking at that point.
yes. At that point, we would drink, we would smoke, we'd spend the night at people's houses, and then wake up the next day, and everybody's done, and I'm wanting more.
Yeah.
And it took me years to realize what that was.
Mm.
It took me years, really this year, to realize what that was. But it definitely it activated that disease for me for sure, wide open.
So you're in seventh grade.
Mhm,
You're starting into some gang activity.
mhm.
Um, how did it feel to?
I felt like I finally belonged to something. I was really at that point. I was elated that I was a part of something besides myself.
Mm,
No matter what we were doing, that wasn't okay. Um, I was uh, I was happy with the situation at the time. Yeah, I wanted to explore that more. So I finally felt like I started to fit in for the first time in my entire life. And then eighth grade year comes along, and then we moved to Tennessee. The summer of my eighth grade year,
what a
it
change
was a big change.
from Southern California
Mhm,
to Los Angeles County
yeah,
to Middle Tennessee.
yes. And I'd already been in some trouble. I got my last 3 months of school. I got expelled from school for getting in a gang related fight. On it was across the street from the school, so it was off of school grounds, but it was too close for comfort for them. It was right at the same time as the Columbine shootings and stuff like that, so they didn't hesitate on kicking us both out. I still got to graduate with the people that I went to school with, but so now for the first time, I'm starting to face a little consequences. But honestly, at that age, it was a badge of honor. I thought, I was
Mm,
okay with it. Yeah, now I got expelled, and I'm the new kid at another school for the last 3 months. Uh, for the first time experimenting with things, and really avoiding my parents. There really wasn't an open dialogue for us to speak on
mhm.
things, and I wouldn't know how to approach it anyway at the time.
Well, yeah,
You
it'd be
know.
hard to understand exactly or
Mhm.
put words to it.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's hard to put words to it, especially at younger ages.
Absolutely.
So, what was it like, the transition when you first came to
Mhm.
Tennessee?
Um, culture shock, to say the least. Growing up in Los Angeles, I didn't know rural places existed with no sidewalks or public transit or, a bunch of homeless people everywhere. A place that was predominantly white. I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't know there was this many white people left in the world. Wow. Growing up in Los Angeles and being so young, it was all I knew. Mm-hmm. So, and you would think that I would transition in, but because it was something so different than when I grew up to, I was out of place all over again. Mm-hmm. So here I was reliving where I just thought that I'd come out of, So, my first year of high school, I ate lunch by the trash cans. I didn't know where to eat at because I didn't know what gangs were claiming tables.
At Tennessee. Mm. We're going to pause right there. This is a good moment to take a break, and we're going to hear a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back just a moment.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com. or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back from the break. We are talking with Eric Klein today, who has graciously come on here to share his recovery journey, and hopefully it's inspiring people already, or maybe you can make connections with that. If you know somebody out there today who is in fighting addiction, or maybe they're in recovery and they could just use a boost today, it really helps people to be able to share peer-to-peer situations, so be sure to share his story today. I'm just so I'm so enthralled by this already, because we're hitting a lot of different angles, than what sometimes we get to hear in our area, alone. But like the culture thing has really been a big light, to kind of draw on this. We learn how to adapt eventually, but sometimes the adaptation comes with unhealthy ways of adapting. You know what I'm saying? Like we keep looking until we find some way to fit in, which is a message within itself, to love others, to love one another, and that sort of thing. So let's pick up where you left off. You were just moving to Middle Tennessee, where total culture shock, eaten by the trash cans at lunch.
So in California, there's gangs that claim tables, and you can't just sit anywhere. Not without it being really dramatic, So I assumed that it was like that here, because it was all I ever knew. It pretty quickly I realized that it wasn't. But at first, I couldn't understand what anybody was saying. None of my teachers, they couldn't understand what I was saying. I can hear the accent in my voice now. We adapt, like you said. I'm pretty good at adapting at that time, especially in all the wrong ways, as far as survival skill.
Yes.
So I started my freshman year in high school. It wasn't long after that I was driving. I started driving my sophomore year, and I did what I knew. I started using smoking pot and doing everything that I could get my hands on, and that did what it did for me when I was younger.
Like the food did?
Like the food did. Like
Yeah.
the food did. So at this point, I'd already gotten over an eating disorder, but now I had a drug problem, which needed funding. So I went to work. I worked almost full time all the way through high school.
Wow.
I worked 35 hours a week. I was an assistant manager at a Domino's.
Wow.
I was a server at Old Charlie's, and I worked all the time. I didn't have any time for any sports. I didn't want to play any sports, but I was built for sports. I just didn't want to have to take drug tests. So it had me really be not affiliated with school, things like that.
Okay, I got to pause there and ask a question. So to play sports, which, in an addictive brain, we wouldn't stop and think about this probably at that moment, because at that point, the substances are like the beast in the brain talking, saying, you've got to have more of me and less of anything else. But sports could have been like a connection point, like kind of like you joined the gang, right? To fit in, to feel like a part. And a lot of times I think sports serve as an alternative to that, to fit in, to feel like you have a place or an outlet to have some part of you and what you're good at be able to show, like, because you bond on a team,
Right.
that sort of thing. But to know you wanted to play sports, but you didn't want to take the drug test. So you were having to ultimately, at that point, had addiction just taken over and was like screaming so much to keep you from the things you wanted to do, the joy?
Oh, absolutely. But at that point, I couldn't identify it as addiction. And really, socially, nobody else could either. For me, it was I'm living this way, they're living this way. And I thought I was choosing the path for myself at the time. So it quickly, the drugs that I was doing got really more explicit really fast. I knew that I was probably the only one in high school that was doing the things that I was doing at the time, which honestly, I felt good about at the time. Now I had that inside, the inside information that I felt like everybody else had on me. So I started hanging out with older people that didn't go to school. And I would go to school and had been up all night working. And then the next addiction came, which was women. I started I started finding myself and identifying. I had an identity issue. So because I didn't know who I was, so now I'm starting to identify in other people. I find myself in other people, and especially women. So now I have all these codependent behaviors. So I was seeking those codependent relationships as well.
Codependence is a beast within itself,
isn't it?
It really is. And comes about from fear of abandonment, fear of not being good enough or fitting in, all the things, all the makings you're talking about as a child. I think the statistic, allegedly the statistic is like 90% of Americans are codependent, which tells me that we do a pathetic job of the way we treat each other.
Oh, absolutely. And and it's a lack of education on it.
Yes.
Yeah. Within this last year, I just learned that I can identify that as codependency now. I've probably been codependent up until I was 39. I really just turned 40. So, but it took a point of actually getting some education to identify what these behaviors were. Because for me, I'm just filling a void. with everything that I can. I substituted the food for narcotics, and now the need for someone else to be there to validate me, because I couldn't self-validate because there was no self-love there. So with the lack of self-love and with the lack of self-validation, I need validation from somebody else. Had I known any good coping tools or coping mechanisms, I probably would have gotten into sports or something like that. But at this time, I was so consumed with escaping that that's all I thought about. And that's every decision I made was to escape myself. So I spent years running away from myself after that. I thought these were decisions that I thought this was a lifestyle that I chose. I really honestly thought it was a lifestyle choice. And at this point, I was chemically dependent by the time I was 17. So that was when Oxycontin first,
Came on the scene.
came on the scene. I didn't really know what it was, but I know what it did. And I was chemically dependent while I was in high school. So I quickly progressed into maintenance. And I knew I was probably too young to be dealing with this stuff on my own. But then again, there was nobody to really talk to. I was on probation in high school because my legal troubles had caught up with me because of drug use. I failed 7 consecutive drug tests until they just stopped drug testing me.
So I have a question. Did anybody ever offer you help, or did they just offer you punishment?
So first the punishment, and then you would take these little classes that were these supposed to be intervention type classes. We had DARE programs when I was in school, which none of us took them seriously. There were these little classes that you sit and watch this video that's really unrelatable, and you check some boxes and stuff like that. But as far as like any type of one-on-one therapy or being able to talk to somebody or anything like that, no, it just wasn't there then. It just was not. There was no offer for help for anything like that. Most of the time, they would just send people like me off to juvenile.
I think this is why trauma-informed schools are going to be critical to defeating the crisis, the addiction crisis. To be able to have like all staff on board and trained what to look for and how to say, hey, like, I see you, and there is help, but you have to know, we have to be informed about what the help is to know that there's help. Not just you as the addict, but like as the people that are working around you. We spend most of our time at school because, afterwards, like you said, don't want to go home, want to go different places. You're hanging out with different people, but school is a place where, we're having to be. And, I think that recovery high schools too are becoming a thing now to some degree. I don't know a whole lot about them yet, but I just think that's amazing because we have it's just like an epidemic, of addiction in our country. And to start those resources at school age and young school, like at high school, it's already too late a lot of times. Like this is junior high and elementary school actually, but
and it's not just about educating the children, because for me, I'm in such a rebellious mind state. You couldn't tell me nothing. I mean, I was a teenager. It's really about educating the people around them.
Yes.
For specific situations like this, and it just wasn't there when I was growing up.
Right.
Not in the slightest. I'm not saying the science wasn't there. I'm not saying all that stuff. It just wasn't socially accepted the way that it is right now. And if it had been, my life might have took a different turn. But
I think I think a lot of times too at that the 90s, the early 2000s, those sort of things. It was easier to bury our head in the sand, and if I don't look at the problem, maybe it'll go away. As far as the people around, just not accepting that there was a problem in the beginning, or if I was a teacher at that time, it would have been really hard to not know what I'm looking for, or like to address things with the kids, at that time frame. Because I come from that era that you are,
Right.
talking about, and a little bit older. So, yeah, it would have
Yeah.
been beneficial, but
It-
it would be beneficial today for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And there's schools and there's people who are really getting up to speed with this stuff, which is great. It really is.
Mhm.
There was a long time. I had 20 years of active addiction after this. So, after that, it was just maintaining, and it just wasn't there. I mean, there was times I asked for help a couple times, and the funding wasn't there, or there was just not the means to do it. It just wasn't, like I said, it just wasn't as accepted socially as it is now as far as recovery goes.
So you've mentioned, it got to a point of maintaining.
Mhm.
Um, how hard was that life to live?
At first it was hard, and then I come to terms with that's what life was. I maintained that for so long. It was, 20 years of just not to be sick and going through withdrawals, which placed me in some real sticky situations. I've worked at after hours clubs in Nashville just to have better access to things. The people that I associate with, um, it would put me in places where I generally wasn't safe. I felt safe there. Anytime I traveled out of town, I would go to where I'd ask people where the bad neighborhood was, because that's where I knew my people were. So I would actually seek out these places that weren't safe. Um,
To feel safe.
to feel safe, because it was the only way that I could do anything to feel like I was a part of this world, to feel like I belong.
That's so true, because we go back to our familiar.
hmm hmm
Yeah.
And I maintained that for a long time. As soon as I tried opiates, I knew then I was going to throw my whole life at it. I did. And like we was talking about earlier, uh, despite my best efforts, God has derailed that from me.
I'm glad you brought that
Yeah.
up. We're going to introduce him into the situation here in a moment.
Mhm.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in just a moment.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery, or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back from the break. We're in a very interesting life story here of Eric's. Eric, this is going really good places. You mentioned before the break, God's coming on the scene at this point. So let's go with that. Pick up where you left off.
Okay, so like I said, despite my best efforts, God has always intervened in my life. My best efforts, what I wanted was to be a successful addict. That was my ambitions in life at this point. Any dreams that I had as a kid were gone. My early 20s and 30s, and, even up until, those last few years, I couldn't begin to tell you what I aspired to be as a kid because I spent so long just trying to not be me, not feel like I'm in my own skin. I spent years after that in and out of jail, in in Tennessee. I went to jail in California for a little bit. I caught some serious charges out there when I was 19. In Malibu, California, I got arrested for having some heroin. And at that point, it was just, like I said, it was maintenance for years. So I was in and out of the system. And every time I go, at first, I would have no intention on ever changing. I would just go through my thing and then come out and go right back to what I knew I was going to come out to. And then as I got older, I started getting kind of sick of myself. And it still wasn't enough because at this point, I still had no tools. At this point, I recognized God and I'd been saved, but I'd still fallen way off. I'd use God, but I wouldn't let him use me.
Oh.
So I would sit there and I would have these really one-sided selfish prayers. Fix this and I'll do making deals, making deals. And deals that I had in the second that I said it had intention of honoring, but never did, So I spent years in and out of the system. I can't even put a number on it. So the last few times that I was incarcerated, I started diving into scripture and thinking that, that I knew that I needed a change. I realized that every thought that I had was how I was going to get that next fix or how I was going to, manipulate this person so I could continue to do what I was doing. And I realized that I needed a whole change. And it still took me 15 years past that. The change wasn't overnight by any means. So I started diving into scripture thinking that I would come out fixed. So the one thing that I learned a lot about the scriptures. I did. I had nothing but time to study them. I built a relationship with God while the jail was keeping me safe from myself.
Right. There are worse things than jail.
Oh man.
Yes. Sometimes jail is going to save your life. Sometimes that's where you're going to finally meet God. I'd say that a lot. I wish I had red tape to put red X's all over every spot in the floor that I have seen somebody finally just let God in. So
I let God in several times in jail, but I didn't take him out with me.
Yeah.
I tried to, but the one thing that I didn't learn was anything about myself. So, this is all just recent education for me in this last year about myself. But all the reading and all the studying, all the praying, I couldn't take them with me when I walked out the doors. I thought I tried, but in not understanding the nature of my disease and not understanding where all this stuff stemmed from, I didn't have any tools. I didn't have enough education on myself to be successful at anything. I see how many times God has spared my life. Several failed suicide attempts. I was very unsuccessful at anything I tried. Thank goodness, at everything.
That's grace.
I tried to go to school. I go to these little tech schools and things like that. I went to school for 5 or 6 different things, and I tried to stay high through the whole thing. And I just never found an interest in anything except for getting high. And then I did a little bit of jail time. I got out and I got on Suboxone to try to maintain. Me and my wife, we were We've been living out of a truck for about 2 years. If it wasn't for each other, we would have froze to death in the wintertime. And we got sick of that life too. The truck was really cramped for both of us there. But anyways, we just said that we wanted something different and we were going to save money and build up from there. So we did. I still was out on bond, and we got married, and then I violated my bond. So we went on a run, and then I went and did my time. I got out, and then we decided to start this life together, right? Started saving money, and we moved from a weekly hotel to this slum and from there to, this little place out in the country. And then we bought our house, and, we really worked our way up from there. And I was wanting to be happy with it. I felt like I was worldly successful, but I was miserable inside. I was going to church, but I was going through the motions. I wasn't clean because I was taking Suboxone, still using here and there. I felt like there was a part of me that just wasn't all in anything. And I maintained that for a long time. We saved up plenty of money. We prayed for a child, and a month after we prayed, we've been together 5 years at this point. A month after we prayed, we was pregnant with my daughter, Lyric. And I couldn't maintain it. I maintained it for about 3 years. And then I started using other things besides my medicine. About the time COVID hit, I had too much time to myself. My doctor wasn't holding me accountable. I tried to come off Suboxone myself, and then full-fledged relapse to a point where I went through the worst withdrawal that I'd ever had in my life. It about killed me. It's going to sound, I don't care how it sounds. God called me home when I was going through that withdrawal. And I went, and Kelsey slapped the bottom of my wife, slapped the bottom of my feet, and it brought me right back. But I didn't think anything about my daughter or my wife. Like, I went. He says, you just don't have to hurt anymore. And I still didn't understand anything about myself at this point or why I was making these decisions or anything. So DCS got involved and took my daughter. And I fought it and got her back. Didn't work on myself at all. Didn't even try. I stayed clean-ish, got back on Suboxone, and then the history repeated itself 2 years later. But this time, I went to treatment, and it was a pivotal moment in my life. My motives weren't the purest when I went, but they become that way over time.
I got to pause right here for just a moment. I know that people on the outside of addiction, a lot of times family, friends that want more for somebody that they care about that's in addiction, but it's easy to get frustrated and say, and look and think, they're not trying, they're not doing anything, they're not trying. If there's one thing that I hear in your story today over and over is all of the ways that you were trying to be better, even if you weren't ready to lay the addiction down yet, but the jobs, the work at asking for help, sometimes, trying to grow a life and have a life. And like, there's a lot of trying in your story, in what you're saying, trying the way you knew how, or anything you knew, because you didn't have the resources and didn't know how, which is leading up into this moment of treatment. But sometimes that goes to prove how, like, that drug talks to that brain so much. And even though you're digging and clawing and trying to get out to a new life, sometimes it's not for a lack of trying. I'm not going to say it's always that way, but sometimes it's not for lack of trying.
I was on autopilot. I hated what I was doing. And several times my wife would watch me use and be crying the whole time because I was so done, and I couldn't be. It was at this point, I'd been in active addiction for 25 plus years. I'd kind of given into myself at this point. There's not many people I know out there who have that kind of time in active addiction. They're still alive. My life has been spared for a reason. It took me some time to come to terms with that. Most people that I grew up with and knew have all passed away. And I know everybody can relate to that, especially now with the family on. The love for God, the love for my daughter, the love for my parents, it wasn't enough. It was not enough. And it's sad to say, but it wasn't.
The drug's powerful.
Oh, until I got the education on what this was and I learned a little bit about myself and had to truly surrender, I wasn't ready. But a lot of the times, and I can say this about my parents, is people parent out of fear when they see this stuff.
Yes.
They don't know how to relate, because how can somebody who doesn't have that mind state look at somebody and have the same mind state? They're thinking, well, just be better. And for me, that wasn't the case. It was me trying to be better. It was the only way that I knew to live or to feel normal, any type of normalcy, you know. So
you went to treatment.
So I went to treatment. I went to a 30-day facility in Dixie, Tennessee, Muir Lake. And I got something there. At first, I was just kind of going through the motions. I wanted to give myself 30 days clean of everything. So at the time, I thought people weren't really following through with it, but I really had to give my all to it, you know.
That is awesome. I can't wait to hear that part of the transformation part, but we're going to take a quick break so I don't have to interrupt you, and then we'll be right back.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. You know, it feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back. Eric, you have went to recovery home. Or rehab.
Yes.
Tell us what happened there.
I didn't know what to expect. It's the first time in my life that I went to treatment. And I wasn't really willing at first, but I got really willing. I had a spirit of doneness. You know, I was so sick of myself. But I had to learn some things. For the first time in my life, I had some self-honesty, which I seen in other people, and I fell in love with it, but I didn't understand it. I had something that I had to learn. I had to learn self-love and self-care, which is something that I never had. So these are all brand new skills for a 40-year-old man that I'm just starting to navigate myself. When I come out of treatment, I went to meetings, got plugged in, Waymakers and all the other meetings of war that I could, and just really threw myself at recovery. I was so done with my way that I had to try something different. So I just gave it to God and took suggestions that I didn't necessarily agree with at the time. And I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about the decisions that I made. And, you know, where I am today, I've got a year and a few months, 14 months clean.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That is you should be proud.
I do. I can't take credit for it. It's God. If I had a hand in it, I wouldn't be here. It's most definitely God. I do. I got a real passion for H&I work, hospitals and institutions. I love taking meetings and sharing my story at hospital or rehab and things like that. Things like this. If I could share my story and touch one person and just let them know that you're not too far gone. If anybody was too far gone, it was me.
Yeah.
I took it as far as you could take it. It's worth reaching out and getting plugged in to the recovery community.
Were you shocked at what you found in recovery?
Absolutely. The fellowship of people, the way that it's grown, this wasn't here when I was growing up. It just wasn't, but to see what it is now, it's a privilege and a blessing to be a part of it. It really is.
Did you think you would ever say that before?
No, I never thought I'd be doing anything like this, right? Honestly, or even sharing my story with honesty.
Yeah.
Without an ulterior motive or anything like that.
Yeah. And now you get to lead the way for other people.
Well, I'm letting God lead the way. I'm just trying to follow him,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is beautiful. And so your life today, you just had a new baby. Oh, he's so sweet.
Yes. So they said I'm stubborn. They said don't make big changes the first year in recovery. So, we sold our house. We had a baby. We started a business. So, I took most of the suggestions, but some of them just kind of happened. So, just kind of went with it.
You did. Mm-hmm. And you're leading recovery groups. You're like sponsoring people at this point. You have a full life. Mm-hmm. You have a very full life.
Absolutely. And I never thought this could be life, especially mine. It seems so unobtainable. And I thought even the people who were sharing things like this were lying, because deep down I was lying. So because I wasn't honest about anything of myself, I was projecting that onto the world around me. But there's truth to this, and there's freedom in it.
So for anybody who may be listening today that's on the fence about, do I really want to lay this lifestyle down and pick up a life of recovery? Have you had any regrets?
None. I wished I'd done it sooner.
Yeah.
I wished I'd done it sooner. That's the only, this time is perfect. There's a reason my story went as long as it did. But at the same time, I wish that I plugged into I wish the resources were there when I was younger to actually get plugged in the way that I am now.
And knowing, like, doing so later in life, you're not old, but like doing so later in life, like I hear people say sometimes, well, I've just been this way so long and like it's too late for me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the expedited healing that you've received so quickly, like just the transformation in your life in the last 14 months alone. Would you ever tell anybody, oh, let your age hold you back? I mean, I know that's a silly question.
No, I feel old. You're definitely on point there. But at the same time, no, like it's never too late. And that's the lie that we tell ourselves. We're going to find any excuse not to do this. That's the lie that we tell ourselves.
It makes me think of the verse, and I love this verse because I hang on to this so many times, is he will give us back the years the locusts have eaten. And,
yes.
Of course, the locusts are coming out right now in Tennessee. But, yes, he will give them back. But it's not, it's expedited almost.
It is. And all the years I wasted in my youth, here I am 40 with a newborn,
Yes.
So, like, he does restore, for sure, like things that I should have done younger. But, no, it's never too late. And the recovery communities that are growing and the education that is out there now, my hope is that, if anybody's listening that's not plugged in or is on the fence, jump on in, the water's fine.
I love that. Well, I also want to give a shout out because you did start a business and you're very passionate about that. And I've watched you be able to use that in ways, to be a blessing to other people, even as a matter of fact. Junked Out LLC. This is his business, junk hauling, cleanup, construction site. And I'm plugging this for anybody in the Middle Tennessee area, you contractors, you property developers, industrial businesses, or if you're just cleaning out storage or your homes or the big projects or whatever, look them up, give them a call, Middle Tennessee Junked Out LLC, because this is your guy right here. And what a better way to help him keep jump starting this life, to just keep pouring into that. So that's what we're here for, right? Is to help one another grow. And I just really want to promote that. Eric, I'm so grateful that you came on here today. I appreciate the rawness of your truth of the story and just your vulnerability in it, to be able to use it so that somebody somewhere can say, hey, I identify with that. That maybe we all have different stories and different backgrounds, but when somebody can identify with it, man, can it light a flame of hope. And of course, God was the way, and he's the way to break free of anything. We got to look to Jesus. So I'm so thankful once again. Thank you guys for tuning in today. Like, share, subscribe to Bold Brave TV to catch this live each week and hear more inspiring stories like Eric's. And we look forward to seeing you guys next week.
This has been The Way to Break Free with your host, Angela Pedigo. The one thing Angela attributes her personal victories to is her relationship with God and her deep faith. Tune in each week and hear stories and testimonies of people in personal and professional trenches and how they overcome them with their own faith in God. The Way to Break Free has something for everyone, everywhere. Right here, Wednesdays, noon Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.